you everyone for joining. Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us on this webinar on the occasion of Data Privacy Day. So Data Privacy Day is currently being observed worldwide, and the purpose of this event is being to raise the awareness and promote privacy and data protection best practices. And via this webinar, QRC is trying to contribute to this event by introducing one of the beautifully designed privacy management standard that is globally recognized and can be adapted by the organization in any industry, any size, using any technology, and whether they want to protect the privacy of their customers or their own people. Data Privacy Day's educational initiative originally focused on raising awareness among businesses as well as users about the importance of protecting the privacy of their personal identifiable information online, and particularly with the context of social networking. However, as the time progressed, this has got extended to cover the requirement of protecting the personal information in the business areas as well. So with this, maybe first we will understand what is privacy. Now, privacy in general terms, when any one of us is thinking about the privacy, there are few initial thoughts that come into our mind. So very first could be right to be alone, where you do not want to get distracted by anything. You want to spend some time with yourself. You want to keep some information with yourself. That is right to be alone. Freedom from interference or intrusion. So you do not, as an individual, you do not want any interference of anyone else in your premises or in your aura, I would say. Ability of an individual to seclude their information. So I, as an individual, can decide what information I want everyone to know about me, or what information I do not want anybody to know. It just to stay with me only. And then state of being free from public scrutiny. That is what I do not want certain information about myself to become public. So this is, in layman terms, what is privacy. Now, otherwise, this is a major doubt that might be coming for somebody who is new to this concept of privacy. So data security and data privacy. So what is the difference between security and privacy? Now, both these terms, I would say, are two sides of the same coin. So both are actually working hand in hand. So when I'm saying data security, it is protecting the data from compromise by the external attackers or even the insiders, where the confidentiality, integrity, availability of the data to be protected. When we are talking about data privacy, it is about how the data is being collected, shared, or used responsibly to ensure that the privacy of an individual whose data it is not getting affected, right? Now, let us talk about the actual definition of personal identifiable information. So, information that directly identifies an individual, that becomes the personal identifiable information, that is name, address, social security number, telephone number, email address. So any information by which I can identify another individual directly without any additional efforts, that is a personal information. There is another type of a personal information where it says you will need to link that information to other type of informations, and then you can identify some individual out of it. So we normally refer to as linked information and linkable information. Now, linked information is where it is directly linked to any individual, right? So social security number, my telephone number, my email address, my name, these are all linked to me as an individual, where when these information somebody gets access to, they can identify Akshita as an individual. Now, linkable information is something where there are multiple type of information, multiple data fields available with you, and then you will have to link those, and then that information when linked together will help you identify Akshita as an individual. Probably there might be multiple Akshitas over the world, then there will be Akshitas in Mumbai, then you will further link it to the Akshita who's working with QRC assurance, and by this way you are linking multiple informations and then you are identifying one individual. So PII broadly we categorize in two types, that is linked information and linkable information. Now there are a few more examples here we see on the next slide about linked information, which is full name, home address, email address, social security number, passport number, driving license number, credit card numbers, my date of birth. Linkable information, either you have the first name or last name, you have some other information like country, state, gender, age, or job position or workplace. So basis on that, you can link this and then you can identify some individual. So these are the linked and linkable information. Now, there has been a lot of talk about protecting the privacy, and then we are celebrating this World Data Privacy Day today. So why there is so much importance for this data privacy, and why everybody is talking about protecting data privacy or protecting privacy as overall, right? The reason behind this is the consequences. So when in today's era, when there are a lot of social networking sites, there are multiple type of businesses, there are various variety of the products and services companies are offering. Even a minor mobile phone, even while you're installing an application, it asks to access your contacts, it asks to access your mobile phone gallery, it asks to access your messages. With even sometime when you are traveling, your location is being tracked all the while. When you search something on the internet, just for it, and then everywhere you see the notification about buying that particular thing. So this is how our each and every activity is getting tracked, is getting observed to create a data intelligence and to give us a better products and services by the various enterprises who are working worldwide. But then the consequence, what if the data, the privacy information is leaked? What will happen? What are the consequences? So failure to ensure data privacy can cause lots of trouble to an organization, and the few troubles are very first, I would say, out of these three which are mentioned on the slide, the very first I can say is loss of trust, right? So if you as an individual realize that, oh, my personal information has got leaked or has got been used for some other purpose than for what I have submitted for, then you may think, or you will think 10 times before submitting your personal information to the same organization next time, right? So loss of trust, loss of reputation, because of course when the such type of breach happens on a large scale, then there is a market reputation loss that happens, and then that brings in the financial loss, right? Because as an organization, your product and service sale will decrease, or customer will stop trusting you. There will be, as part of the agreement, there will be some actions taken by the financial fines against your organization. So all this will bring into the financial losses. So a series of consequences can start if any organization fails to protect the data privacy. And that is one of the reasons we are hearing so many things recently about since last few years about protecting the data privacy. Now, this is again one of the latest news. I think this is in yesterday's newspaper only. It has, it was published, where the personal data bill that Indian government is coming up with, almost 70% of the leaders view this personal data protection bill as an opportunity to build trust, right? So where this survey included almost 150 business managers or business CXOs, and they are saying that one of the major reasons why they want to implement the controls of the privacy within their organization is to build the trust within their customers to say with their personal information. While nearly two-thirds of the people are concerned about their personal data being handled by social media companies and the government, about 93 enterprises are prioritizing privacy in their digital transformation journey, according to this survey. 93% enterprises are prioritizing privacy in their digital transformation journey. Now, this survey had out of the 100 respondents of this survey, 80% respondents said there is no participation from the business in an organization's data privacy agenda. 56% said lack of skills and inadequate awareness are one of the two major reasons why the business is restricting from prioritizing data privacy. Businesses actually, so there has been so many talks all around about the privacy, but there are very few set of people or organizations can actually have the skills and awareness about the privacy part. 75% said lack of skilled resources and unaware employees are the biggest barriers to their privacy programs. Now, why awareness is important? Because the employee awareness plays a major role is because they are the one who actually are handling the privacy or PII information as part of their day-to-day roles and responsibilities. So it is very important that they must be aware about what is this PII and what is the criticality of this information that I am handling with as part of my job responsibility. And if something goes wrong or if this PII is compromised, what is the consequence that is going to happen over my company, right? 50% said that while media, social media, or plays a key role in enhancing awareness on privacy, the firms also need to invest in skill enhancement and sensitizing their employees and consumers about the importance of data privacy. So yes, all that we learn is via what we read online, right? But then when any organization is planning to implement the data privacy within their organization, awareness in providing necessary awareness and ensuring necessary skills and resources are available is one of the critical area as part of the journey towards the data privacy. Now, since the beginning, I have been mentioning that, worldwide there has been a lot of talk about the data privacy or privacy management. So these are some of the examples where almost every country worldwide is coming up with their own set of rules, their own set of regulations or acts or frameworks or guidelines towards protecting the data privacy. Now, these are some of the examples where if you see almost every country is listed over here and they have some or the other. So these are some of the examples where you see how worldwide the countries are coming up with the requirements of protecting data privacy. Right? Now, what will be the requirements of now if any one of you has this query, does this apply to my organization, whether we should implement, we should plan for some data privacy related journey of our organization, from where does the requirement of compliance for privacy come? Now, these are few of the areas from which the requirement of data privacy compliance, where very first is statutory or regulatory requirement. Now, statutory or regulatory requirement is all this list that you see here. If you are doing business in whichever country or region that you are doing the business in, if there are some legal requirements for data privacy protection, then your business must comply to that requirement. Now, GDPR is one of the best example which almost every one of us must be knowing, where this is one of the statutory or regulatory requirement applicable for the EU specific region. Contractual requirements. Now, contractual requirements is what? Now, there are no boundaries to the business. Now, any company any organization doing business in India can have customers anywhere in the world, right? Similar, so for that matter, if the customers are demanding for any particular privacy specific requirements or controls to be implemented, the organization will have to implement those controls, right? The third is management decision. Now, as management is being aware about what's happening in the industry and probably being aware about the consequences of breach to the data privacy, management can come up with the initiative to protect the business reputation and to avoid financial losses to the business. Fourth can be business sector specific requirement. So the data privacy laws, acts, guidelines, etc. These are not just country or region specific, but yes, there are some certain requirements which are specific to the business sector. So if your business is in the healthcare, in the banking, or in the technology domain, so these are all areas where a specific set of business requirements for protection of privacy can come up. And then the very last and very important one, organizations' own policy and procedures for data privacy. So organization themselves may have some requirements for, these are the minimum controls that we want to ensure are irrespective of the statutory, contractual, business sector specific requirements. These are some of the controls that we will always ensure that in place within our organization to protect the data privacy. Now, what happens is, since there are multiple ways the organization may get the requirements of data privacy, this results in the organization will have to comply with more than one data privacy compliance requirement, right? So suppose if it is statutory or regulatory requirement, then it comes GDPR. If it's a contractual requirement, then in the contract, customer may have some specific requirements for data privacy. Maybe it is about sharing periodic reports about the data privacy control performance or anything. Business sector specific requirement, there might be some specific requirements for business sector. Say suppose if it is in the banking, then they may need to go for certain assessments, they may need to go for so that is the reason, as I say, as a result, there will be more than one data privacy compliance requirement that each organization that dealing with personal information will have to adhere to. And with so many compliance requirements, it will be difficult to be sure that your organization is compliant with each one of them or not. So how do we track? Like, this is a real scenario where one organization has to comply with multiple compliance requirements, be it data privacy, be it information security, be it anything else, right? So there are too many regulatory requirements the organization has to juggle through. Like, they have to develop a set of documents as per those compliance requirements. They will have to ensure that the records are available as per each specific compliance requirements. They will have to ensure the periodic activities like, say, vulnerability assessment, penetration testing, risk assessment, vendor reviews. There are a lot of such requirements which periodically the organizations will have to do to ensure that the records are being maintained, right? And then all this, while doing all this and also managing all these compliances, adds up a cost to the organization, takes up a lot of time of the organization, where, in terms of facing multiple audits, in terms of ensuring all the compliance specific internal activities are being performed on a timely basis, in order to ensuring the records are maintained properly, in order to respond to each customer with their own set of data privacy or security requirements. So it adds up a lot of cost and lot of time to the business. And as a result, on top of that, the biggest challenge for that organization is, at any point of time, how to say that whether we are compliant to all the compliance requirements, or we are compliant or not compliant, right? Whether all the controls which are designed and implemented as per the legal requirement, as per the customer requirement, as per the sector specific requirements or as per the organization's own requirements, whether these controls are working effectively, how frequently to monitor, how to say that we are doing good, how to ensure there are no incidents happening with respect to data privacy or information security. So these are all compliance challenges. I'm sure many of us are facing, where if your role is within your organization involved to contribute to these compliances of the organization. Now, we will come back to, so this is so far what we discussed is what is privacy, what are the various privacy initiatives worldwide, and what are the challenges that the organizations are facing nowadays because of more than one compliance requirements coming worldwide. Now, when I say so since our agenda for today is the privacy, so I will focus on the privacy only. So when we are saying that any organization can get multiple compliance requirements from various sources that they will need to adhere to, this can be multiple data privacy requirements also. So assuming we just saw this list of various compliance, data privacy compliance requirements from the different countries all over the world. So suppose if any organization has multiple locations and they have to follow all the respective data privacy act or laws or guidelines, then how do they manage that? Whether they will implement everything separately or they should implement all, how to integrate all of those, how to ensure, how to face the periodic assessment for these particular data privacy compliance requirements. So these are all challenges that they will start facing. Now, how to start? So how any organization should start their data privacy protection journey? So the very first step is having a compliance strategy. Now, what is the compliance strategy? Now, by compliance strategy here, we mean that the very first step is identify first what is your organization, what are your products and services, what all are your locations from where your organization is doing business, the locations where your customers are located, right? And basis on all this, try and identify exactly which data privacy compliance requirements are applicable to your organization. Right now, assuming any organization which is in India, so soon they will have to comply with the data privacy bill, right? And also, if they have some businesses in the Europe region, GDPR becomes one of the requirement that they will have to follow to. So, and as the business expands, they may have locations for multiple locations, and then they will have to follow the other requirements as well. In the SOC assessment also, there is a privacy principle that needs to be incorporated. So when it is in the US region, then the SOC principle of privacy will also need to be implemented by this organization. So in this one example only, we have identified 3 on an immediate basis, the requirements that this organization will have to adhere to. So developing a compliance strategy, that means either knowing what your business is, knowing what your business is planning to do in your future, and knowing what all are the compliance requirements that may be applicable to your business with respect to privacy. Second step is make an inventory of all PII. So as we just saw in the earlier slide, there are a lot of linked information and linkable information, right? So these are not the only ones, there can be many, right? So that is the reason the organization needs to prepare an inventory of the PII information they are dealing with. The organization should list down what business function, which LOB, which process for which activity, what kind of personal identity PII information is being handled, what is the purpose of that information, how it is getting collected, what is the activity happening, processing happening on top of that PII information, and then where is the output going? Are we sharing that information to somebody else, or are we keeping it to our business only for analysis purpose or whatever business purpose? How long are we going to share that? Whether it is on cloud, whether it is on premises, whether it is only in the digital form, or are we also printing the PII information? So this is how the inventory of all PII that the business is handling that must be prepared. And then establish policies and procedures to ensure that all this PII which has been inventoried are protected. So policies and procedures to protect the PII must be developed and implementation of the documented system. And then finally, now of course, when you are defining the policies and procedures, the organization will need to refer to the compliances requirements that they have identified which are applicable to the business. Accordingly, the documented system must be developed and implemented, and then the organization will need to formally go through the final compliance assessment, wherein they will have to have some evidence to showcase to say that yes, we are compliant to these particular compliance requirements. Now, to note here is, if the multiple data privacy compliance requirements are applicable to the business, then there will be the policies and procedure, the documented system that we are referring here must be developed, which is in compliance with all those compliance requirements. And the final compliance assessment that I am talking about here is, they will have to undergo the assessment for each of the compliance requirements. Now, I have been talking a lot about the challenges of managing multiple data privacy requirements. Now, that is where we are coming up to this particular standard, which is ISO IEC 27701 2019. Now, the standard is designed by, the reason when we started this webinar, I mentioned that this is a very beautifully designed standard. Why it is so, you will know in the subsequent slide. So this standard is referred as Privacy Information Management System. One fact to know here is, this is a standard which is an extension to ISO IEC 27001 and 27002. 27001 is the Information Security Management System standard, and 27002 is a code of, I would say it's a guidance of implementation of 27001 controls. Now, how these two standards are linked? So, as we discussed in the initial slide, data privacy and data security are are two sides of the same coin. That is what it is, where if you are trying to protect the privacy, see, when we say PII is nothing but the information itself. It is just one specific type of information that we are trying to protect here. Now, ISO 27001 ISMS is the standard which talks about the securing the business critical information, where organizations themselves have to identify what is my business, what are my product and services, what is the information that I want to protect, right? So the PIMS standard is an extension to this standard, where so any organization which wants to implement the privacy information management system must implement information security management system as well. So until and unless your organization has implemented information security management system, this cannot be implemented. So applicable to any organization, PII controller or processor. We will discuss in the subsequent slide what is controller and what is processor. And the major reason why this standard is playing a very important role is because this is designed in such a way that this standard can be easily aligned with GDPR or any other privacy regulations which are being developed worldwide. Okay, and how that is so, we will see later. One of the reasons why I say this can be integrated with any other privacy compliance requirement or privacy standard is because the standard is built on information security, privacy, and data protection. It covers all three aspects. So when we say information security, these are the standards which are this standard is already compatible with. That is information security management system, information security code of practice, protection of PII in public cloud, Privacy, it is already in compliance with, compatible with privacy framework, PII protection code of practice, and PIF. And other data protection regulation, so 27701 is already compatible with general data protection regulation. Now, why any organization should plan for this particular standard implementation? So both the GDPR and UK DPA require organizations to take measures to ensure the privacy of any personal data that they handle as part of their business activities. Now, and which is already this standard is covering. Privacy regulations mention the requirements and do not provide much guidance. Now, the reason we are saying that this is a beautifully designed standard is because this standard gives specific requirements and also the guidance on how to implement the privacy information management system. Another reason is the standard is applicable to organization of any size, complexity, location, type, any type of product and services, etc. And also, as we all know, ISO is one of the industry follows one of the best industry leading methods and frameworks for securing PIF. Now, what PIM is, the standard focuses on. The standard focuses on how an organization collects, uses, stores, and erases personal identifiable information. That is the entire life cycle of any PII information which business handles, right? The collection and use of PII, protection of PII, and the rights that individuals have to their PII. Now, with this slide, if any of the participants, if they have already worked with GDPR, this slide will only give you the hint that yes, these are the points, areas which are covered in the GDPR as well. But with this next slide, it will be more clear to all of you. Where if you see, it is ISO 27001 is applicable to regardless of any criteria. It is applicable to any organization who wants to protect the information. GDPR applicable for organizations located in the EU and organizations from outside the EU that process personal data of EU citizens. So GDPR, if you see, it is more specific from the applicability point of view. The reason ISO standards are being accepted worldwide is because there is no criteria of location or size or industry to this particular set of standards. So the only requirement is if your business is handling the PII, then you can implement ISO 27001 plus 27701. Its application is voluntary. So if you see, by voluntary here we mean this is not a legal or regulatory requirement. Yes, as part of the legal thing, your customers can enforce the implementation of this standard. There can be the requirement from the top management of the business. It can be the requirement of business partners, but it is not a mandatory standard to be implemented until and unless it's of course a business requirement coming from the customers or etc. GDPR, it is mandatory. So if you are located in the EU region, if your organization is located in the EU region, or if your organization is processing EU citizens' personal data, then GDPR is mandatory. And here if you see PII, so in the standard it is referred as personally identifiable information. GDPR says personal data. The individual to which this information belongs to, ISO refers this as PII principle. GDPR refers this as data subject. Here we say PII controller or processor. In GDPR it says data controller and processor. So the difference is in terms of the applicability and in terms of the various definitions. Okay, so when we say data subject, it is called as PII principle in ISO standards. That is the only difference. Now, what are the benefits of implementing this standard. It supports compliance with GDPR and the other data protection laws. Why we have been mentioning GDPR specifically? Because the standard copy, if you get the standard copy, it comes with the mapping of the ISO 27701 PIMS standard requirements to GDPR articles. The standard copy includes the mapping of ISO requirements to GDPR article, and that is the reason we are saying it supports compliance with GDPR. So when you are implementing any requirement of the PIMS standard, you can refer in the standard and see which all are the GDPR articles your organization is already getting compliant with by means of implementing this requirement. Improve structure and focus of the data privacy management. Now, improve structure, when we are saying structure, yes, the standard follows a specific structure which has a set of requirements which we refer normally as clauses in ISO and controls. These are the two major sections of the standard. The clauses say section that we say, that is, of course, okay, let us go through that in the next slide. I have another slide which shows the structure of the standard. Embed personal data management in your organization culture. So all the ISO standards works on the principle of plan, do, check, act. And that is how when any organization is implementing any ISO standard, slowly the ISO controls, the standard practices or requirements start getting embedded in your organization's culture and becomes the regular practice. Take a risk-based approach to data privacy management. Now, why this risk-based approach is coming in picture? Because as I mentioned, this standard is an extension to ISO 27001, that is Information Security Management System. And that particular standard is based on this risk-based approach, where the risk to the information must be focused, right? So when this standard is getting extended on the basis of the ISMS, Information Security Management System, so that risk-based flavor will always come when this data privacy management is being done with the PIMS standard. Encourage continual improvement to adapt the changes inside and outside the organization. Now, continual improvement also is one of the key feature of any ISO standard, where the ISO believes on the fact that compliance is a journey. Compliance is not a one-time activity. It's a journey where you plan things, you implement those things, then you check if those are working fine. And if it is working fine, good. If it is not, then you go back to the planning, you again implement, you again check. And that is how the continual improvement starts happening within the organization. Integrate with other leading standards to support GDPR compliance, such as 27000, ISO 27001. So there are multiple benefits. So if you see here, when your organization is planning for the PIMS implementation, the organization will have to implement ISMS, right? And then automatically you're becoming compliant to the articles of the GDPR also. So there are integrations. So ISO 27701 standard is something which is designed in such a way or structured in such a way that it can be, I won't say easy, but yes, it can be a less painful task to integrate this particular standard to other standards, other GDPR or other data privacy compliance requirements. Now, this is the structure that we were referring to in the point 2 here, where these are the initial descriptive clauses. If you see, then I will directly go to this. Now, the standard ISO 27701 standard follows the same structure as ISO 27001. So in ISO 27001 also you have this context of the organization, leadership, planning, support, operation, performance evaluation, improvement requirements. These are the same requirements which are in the ISO 27001 standard. The only difference here is, when I'm saying this is an extension to Information Security Management System, is because when we are saying context of the organization, so here, for example, ISO 27001 says, understand the needs and expectations of interested parties towards information security. This is one of the requirement of clause 4 of ISO 27001. But when the same clause is being referred in the 27701 standard, it simply extends the requirement to management of privacy. So when this same requirement is referred in ISO 27701, it says, understand the needs and expectations of interested parties towards information security and privacy. Okay. When we are saying leadership, where ISO 27001 requires the organization to define the information security policy, when organization is implementing 27701 along with the 27001, then it says the organization must define information security and privacy policy. This is how the each and every requirement of this standard, ISO 27001 standard, has been extended to cover the privacy. When in the operations, when we are talking about planning and operations, when we are talking about the risk assessment, where it says risk assessment must be performed considering confidentiality, integrity, availability, and privacy of the information. This is how the standard has been designed and extended to cover the privacy requirements. The control areas as per ISO 27001 remain same. So these are all the control domains within the ISO 27001. But yes, all these areas will have some additional requirements towards protection of privacy. So when we are saying access control, then the PIMS standard focuses on access control to the privacy information. When we are talking about supply relationship, it is about suppliers with whom the PIM is getting shared for any business purpose. When we are saying cryptography, then it is about ensuring what PI information, what at what level or what must be implemented when we are storing the PI information. When we are saying physical and environmental security, so if the PII is being stored on the physical documents, what are the physical security requirements applied? When I'm referring to human resource security, so what are the terms and conditions that must be accepted by the employees who might be involved in processing of the PII? So these are some of the examples of how ISO 27001 requirements have been extended to cover data privacy. Another could be information security incident management. So how to deal with the incidents which are related to the breach of the privacy, right? So what should be the procedure that organization must develop? So that is covered in these requirements. But in addition to this, the standard has also given some additional guidance for PII controllers and processors. So there are 114 controls in ISO 27001. The same apply to 27701. And in addition to that, there are these additional controls or guidance based on whether the organization is a PII controller or PII processor. Now, we have been discussing a lot with the terms PII principles, PII controller, PII processor. So let us understand what are these. PII principles, persons who provide personal data for processing. So if I am providing my information for processing purpose, I am agreeing to the fact, like I am being the PII principal. PII controller determines the purpose and means of PII processing. Now, controller is somebody with whom I am sharing my information directly. So that becomes the controller. PII processor carries out processing of PII on behalf of the controller and according to its instructions. So if I am sharing my information to any organization, then that organization becomes the PII controller, and then they may further share my information to PII processors, and processor will follow the instructions of a controller. So controller will decide what is to be done with the PII information which is collected from the principal. Okay. Joint PII controller. Now, joint PII controller where PII controller determines the purpose and means of processing jointly with one or more PII controllers. Now, the best example could be last year WhatsApp had come up with the new terms and conditions where it said that the PII information WhatsApp can share it with Facebook. Right. Of course, later on, this was further challenged by our Indian government, and then there are a lot of to's and fro's happened, and WhatsApp had made it a mandate that if you are not accepting these terms and conditions, you cannot access your chats. But I think those that got rolled out, that did not roll out, and then WhatsApp had to make changes to the terms and conditions of the usage of WhatsApp. So that is joint PII controller. So those being the companies, sister companies, they jointly are deciding about what to do about the PII principles data. So that is joint PII controller. PII processing, operation or set of operations performed on personally identifiable information. So that is something, actually the purpose for which I am sharing my PII to the controller. And then at the end, PII is, so this is the definition as per ISO PII. Any information that can be used to identify a PII principal to whom the information relates to, or is or might be directly or indirectly linked to a PII principal. So again, it remains the same information. This point A that I am talking about is the linked PII, which is directly linked to the PII principal. And point B is linkable information. Now, there are some even this ISO standard is based on the privacy principles. So these are some of the privacy principles, which of course are in line with the GDPR or other data privacy requirements. Consent and choice. The person should have the choice whether to allow PII processing or no. So the principal or data subject should have this authority that I can decide whether I want to allow this particular organization to collect my personal information and what personal information they may collect. Purpose, legitimacy, and specification. So there has to be a clear, legitimate reason for which the organization is collecting certain information, or collecting, and also maybe they are retaining certain information. So the purpose of processing must comply with the law and be communicated to PII principal. So me as a PII principal must know why this organization is collecting my personal information. Collection limitation. Now, collection limitation is what? The organization must limit what data they are collecting. So they should collect only for the purpose for which, only for the legitimate reason that they have as per the business. Like for example, if I am going for a shopping, or if I'm buying something online, then it is requested for our email ID or mobile numbers in order to send us the latest news and updates about some discount or some offers going on in that particular store. So that is the purpose. And collection limitation, you only collect my name and my mobile number, because the only purpose is to notify me as a consumer about the latest service that you're offering to, right? But then the organization should not again collect in addition to my address, my social security number, or some other details. Data minimization, minimize PII processed and third party with access to PII. Use retention and disclosure limitation. Now, any organization or PII controller, they must communicate this clearly, that how long are they going to use this by PII information, what is the retention period, and if at all, as part of the processing, are they going to disclose this information to some other organization. So this is what, as a PII principal or data subject, I should know. Okay. Accuracy and quality. So my information as a PI principal must be accurate, complete, up to date throughout the period it is with the organization. So that is accuracy and quality. Openness, transparency, and notice. PII principles receive sufficient, clear, easy to access information. So if I as a PI principal wants to know something or wants to edit my information or I want to request for deleting my information or something, I should have access to this information. Whether how do I send this request, whether I need to send an email or whom I should contact. So this openness and transparency must be ensured with PII principles. Individual participation and access. So PII principals should be able to access and review PII as permitted by the law. So as per the legal requirements, wherever applicable, the PII principal should be able to access their personal information which is stored within the organization. Accountability, the organization shall take the responsibility for the PII processing. So when I am giving a consent and I am submitting the PII to the organization, then it is organization's responsibility to secure my PII. Information security. There should be controls in place to protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data. Privacy compliance. So controls, audits, verifications to ensure PII processing meets requirements. So regularly there must be some compliance audits happening to ensure the compliance, the controls are in compliance with the requirements. With this, I'll move to the next slide. What are the obligations to PII principals? So determine and fulfill the obligations. So identify obligations to PII principal, provide the means to meet the obligations, and provide a contact point to all principals. So as I mentioned in the earlier slide, the PII principal must know how they can connect with the organization regarding their PII. So determine information to PII principal. So these are all the principles that we just discussed. Providing information to PII principal, clear and easy to access, concise, complete, provided in a timely manner. There has to be a timeline. So if I as a PII principal is requesting about my PII information or any such information, the organization must have procedures defined which says how the organization is going to provide the information to PII principal, what are the timelines, what are the contact points of the PII principal, whether PII principal needs to call somebody, a dedicated person, or needs to drop an email to a particular ID. So there has to be a procedure designed in line with this. Providing mechanisms to withdraw or modify consent. So I as a PI principal, if I want to withdraw or modify the consent, then organization must have the procedures defined for that, where the procedures should collect how I as a PI principal can submit my request for modification or withdrawal of my consent, how I should submit a request, what are the timelines, within how much time my request will be approved, in what cases maybe my request may be denied. So that one must be clearly documented, and this procedure must be communicated to PII principal so they know what to do when required. Providing mechanisms to object PII processing. Is my voice breaking? I just saw the message in the chat. Abhishek?
No, it's proper now.
It's fine, please go ahead.
Okay. Providing mechanisms to object PII processing. So as per the applicable legislation, how PII processing in withdrawal situations, the PII processing can be objected, that must be documented. Access, correction, and or erasure. So provide information to PII principals about how they can access, correct, or erase their information. Obligations to inform third parties. So whenever there is any major incident occurs, or if there is any major change is going to happen in the processing activity, then that must be informed to the PII principals. Providing copy of PII processed. Provide a copy of PII processed upon request and transfer a copy of PII to another organization at the request of PII principal if possible. So these are some of the obligations to PII process. So document how requests are handled, response time, fees, responsibilities, process, etc. That is what we discussed earlier. And automated decision making. So now, since most of the business processes are being getting automated, so the automated decision making, how it is going to happen, how it may impact the results, etc., must be documented. Privacy by design and privacy by default. Now, this is something, a principle where it says the organization's framework, the data privacy framework or privacy management system must be designed in such a way that it automatically embeds the privacy, protection of privacy within the organization. Now, how it can be done? It can be done by multiple ways. One is limit collection. So the organization should not collect any PII which is not a business requirement. If organization's business process can do away with a specific type of PII, then organization need not collect that particular information. Collect only that PII which is adequate, relevant, and necessary to the purpose of processing. Limit processing. PII processing should be limited only to what is relevant, adequate, and necessary. So the processing of activity on the PII must be done only in a way that is relevant, adequate, and necessary to the business purpose. And additional processing activities must not be performed to get to like, for example, for research and development purpose or etc. And if at all your organization is doing for that reason, then it must be notified to the PII principal. Accuracy and quality. PII process should be accurate, complete, and up to date throughout its whole life cycle. So whenever, if the whole time the PII is within the custody of the organization, it must remain accurate, complete, and up to date. Data minimization. Processing should only use as much as personal data as it needs in order to achieve the purpose. Data pseudonymization. PII cannot be attributed to a specific PII principle without additional information. That is something you cannot identify a PII principle with this. Data anonymization. PII is irreversibly altered so that PII principle can no longer be identified. De-identification and deletion at the end of processing. So if the processing is over and if it is no longer required, you de-identify and delete the PII processing. Define the retention period of the PII to the shortest possible period. And after that, have a defined procedures implemented to ensure the data is disposed of in a secure manner where it cannot be again recovered. PII transmission controls. Secure PII transmitted and ensure it reaches its destination. This is about the network security. Temporary files. Delete temporary files as soon as they are not needed for the processing. And then disposal, which I already discussed, along with retention part. PII sharing, transfer, and disclosure. So this is how the PII can be shared, transferred, or disclosed. So countries and international organizations to which PII can be transferred, that must be documented and it must be made available to the customers and to the PII principal. Records of PII disclosure to third parties. So any point of time within the during the PII processing, if the PII is getting disclosed to third parties, the records of such events must be maintained by the organization. Records of transfers of PII. So one is disclosure of PII, another is transfer of PII. So both the events must be recorded by the organization and that must be presented to the PII principal when it is requested. Now, these are various examples of conditions for collection and processing, like why any organization is collecting the PII. So it can be a customer agreement requirement, it can be organization's own purpose. That is, in order to deliver the products and services, the organization will need to collect the PII. Marketing and advertising use purpose, infringing instructions. So inform the customer about processing instructions that could be infringing the legislation, if at all. Customer obligations, provide the information needed to meet the obligation. Records related to PII processing. So that is, throughout the processing cycle, the records must be accurately maintained to demonstrate that the organization has performed the PII processing as documented or as per their own set of policy procedure and in compliance with the applicable requirements such as GDPR or this ISO 27701. Now, these are again the obligations which we have already discussed. So I think now here we are end of the slides for the about the standard introduction, but here I want to say that the benefit, as we started, we discussed about what is privacy, how it is applicable, what are the challenges in the implementation, and how worldwide lots and lots of data privacy requirements are coming up, and how it can be a very troublesome task for any organization to manage so many compliances. And then we landed up on the ISO 27701 standard. The reason being, the standard is structured in such a way that it can be easily integrated with any of the data privacy requirement. It can be an act, it can be a legal requirement. The reason why it can be integrated is because it is an extension to the another worldwide best standard, that is ISO IEC 27001 Information Security Management System. So both these standards are, because those are not being those can be adopted by any organization irrespective of their size, their complexity, products and services, locations, etc. That is the reason it can be easily integrated with any other data privacy requirement. Another good part about this standard is the standard provides a clear instructions or guidelines about what needs to be done in each area. Like it talks about access control, it talks about software development, cryptography, asset management, human resource security, incident management, change management, network security, and so many stuff. Within each area, what needs to be done. Also, another point is this standard is based on the risk-based approach, where the organization starts thinking from the risk point of view to the data privacy. So you're already thinking about the risk to the PII within your organization. So it is kind of a proactive approach starts getting embedded within the organization when such standard is being implemented. Also, another thing that I mentioned is the standard follows the plan, do, check, act cycle, wherein this plan, do, check, act cycle starts embedding the continual improvement within the organization. Now, being all this, the question might arise is it like if my organization implements ISO 27701, then I need not implement GDPR or any other specific privacy requirement? The answer is no. Your organization will still have to implement other compliance requirements which are applicable to your business as part of the legal requirement, as part of the customer requirements, right? That must be implemented. The benefit could be, if those are deployed on top of this standard, then it will, the chances are If your organization is already compliant with ISO 27701, then the chances are the organization might already meeting at least 50% of the requirements of the other standard, because this being developed in such a manner, right? So with this, I will take your leave. I will pass it on to my colleague, Mr. Nikhil. He will give a brief about QRC, and then we can have a Q&A session. Yes, Nikhil.
Thank you so much, Akshata, for helping us to understand what is exactly this ISO 27701, which we call as PIMS as well. So, I will take few more minutes to all our attendees to explain what QRC into. Okay. Moving quickly, QRC started in the year 2016 as a security consulting firm, okay, by Mr. Vamsi Krishna Maramganti, who is also a founder and a CEO of the company. Within a year, that is in the year 2017, we achieved our first credential. That is, we became a PCI DSS certification body. Okay, and by 2021, we achieved multiple credential in our bucket. That is, we became a certification body for PADSS, PCI 3DS, PCI SSF, ISO 27001, that is ISMS, ISO 27701, that is PIMS, what we are into now. Okay, along with that, we are also helping the organization to achieve a certification in Swift assessment, as well as we are also currently holding the important credential, that is a certain empaneled company. Currently, QRC is serving 25 plus countries across globe. Okay, and we have achieved around 250 plus assessment, okay, in all the security parameters, as well as the 2000 plus security assessment. Next. Okay, these are few important certification services what QRC is following now. As I told you, QRC is currently a certification body for PCI DSS, PCI SLC, PCI SSS, okay, PCI 3DS Swift assessment, ISO 27001, 27701. Along with this, we also help a client to do the assessment for HIPAA, GDPR, as well as SOC 1, SOC 2, SOC 3. Okay. Along with the certification services, QRC is also into the security assessment services, which covers the scans and testing, which we call as VAPT. Okay, I'll just move on to the next slide. VAPT, Web Application PT, as well as mobile testing, thick application testing. And as I told you that QRC is also holding the important credential, that is a certain empanelment. Okay, so with this, QRC are able to do all kind of assessment for all the regulatory bodies like RBI assessment, IRDA, and SEBI, okay, NABARD as well. So moving on to the next slide. Okay, this we have already covered for security assessment. Okay. Along with that, as you've seen that QRC is QRC into multiple assessment. That is the reason we are also able to give you the enterprises compliance framework, where we can customize the services, and those organizations who require more than 2 or 3 compliances at the time, we can do the integrated audit and help them to get the certification for all the services. Along with that, QRC has also implemented or developed 2 in-house products for us. That is QRC GRC Manager, as well as QRC Data Discovery Tool. Okay, these are the few qualification and recognition which you can easily check it on the website. Okay, QRC is a qualified security assessor for payment card industry. We are also a certain empaneled company as well as the Swift assessment body. Okay, you can see few of our client list from all the different sectors as well as the different region. You can see India, Europe, Middle East, America, APAC, Africa. So we are eligible to do this kind of assessment across globe. So these are the few of our client list. Okay, this is our current global presence. Okay, India is the head office and the development center. Okay, along with that, we have also the global presence in USA, Philippines, Turkey, East Africa, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam. You can get connected to QRC below the information where the company website and all the credentials are mentioned. Next. Okay, any questions so far?
That's it. I think now we can have a Q&A session. So please use the Q&A box and drop in your messages. I will try to respond to them. So one of the question in the chat box is, can we have data privacy without security or data security without privacy? The answer is no. I think this question was put in at the beginning of the session. So I think during this session, you must have got the clarity that data privacy and data security both are hand in hand. We cannot do away with only one. While you're ensuring data privacy, data security must be in place. Swapnil is asking, hi Akshita, do we get an accredited certificate for ISO 27701 just like ISO 27001? Yes. So how for ISO 27001 the certification assessment happens, similarly any organization, either the organization can be, there are two scenarios. Maybe the organization is already implemented ISO 27001 and now they want to implement controls additionally as per 27701, or maybe both can be implemented together. But yes, there will be assessments conducted considering both the standards. Ashwin is asking, hi Akshita, can the organization choose to do either privacy by design or privacy by default, or both go hand in hand, Ashwini? The interpretation or the intention of both is same. Rahim is asking, if an organization is ISO 27001 certified and wants to pursue GDPR, what value can ISO 277 standard add? So as I mentioned, Rahim, ISO 27701 standard already comes up with the mapping to GDPR. So when you are implementing this standard, at least 50 to 60%, or I would, it will not be wrong if I say 70% of the GDPR articles will get implemented while you're implementing 27701. Of course, some EU government specific records or evidences, or that must be followed. But a general control implementation can get implemented when you are implementing 27701. Can we modify existing ISMS policy with PIMS? Yes. So the existing ISMS policy needs to be extended to cover the protection of privacy. So it is fine if there is a single policy covering both. There is no such requirement for having two separate policies for information security and privacy. Okay, we have one more question. What is the first thing that a company should do if they want to implement privacy framework? So very first thing that we just saw during this slide is having the strategy developed, where when we are seeing privacy framework implementation, the very first step the organization must do is to identify what PII the organization is handling and for what purpose, and then the actual privacy framework implementation journey starts. Okay, we have one more question. If I get accredited with ISO 27701 and then the bill passes for India, will we have to go through any major modification? See until and unless the bill is passed, we cannot say that what will be the actual. So right now, looking at the bill, when is the one which is currently live or which is currently available for our reference, there are no major modifications that we are seeing as of now, but there might be some changes once this bill is passed. But however, the standard being developed on the basic information security and privacy controls, we do not presume any major modifications. However, let us wait for the bill to pass. Okay, thank you everyone for joining. If there are any more questions, you may contact us via LinkedIn or via email. Thank you so much. Hope the session have been fruitful for all of you.